Hello, welcome to our channel. My name is Ufuk Sayın. Today we will talk USA and NATO with retired Brigadier General Ufuk Uras. Welcome, General.
Thank you, Colonel.
General, since Trump became president, he has had a negative attitude toward NATO. And in his second term, it's gotten even worse. What are the reasons behind Trump's desire to change the US approach to NATO? What do you think?
Maybe many people see it as a personal approach to NATO, but I think it's not only related to Trump's personality, but it is more about the geopolitical shift in the world system. You know, especially after 2000s or mid 2000s, the world order has started to change. After the Cold War, United States was the only hegemonic power. It was a unilateral world order for some time, but with the rise of China and with the return of Russia with its military power to the world affairs, and also with the emergence of new powers, the world has become multipolar, and with the new world order, the United States now feels itself that the US cannot act as it used to do. You know, United States led to the emergence of many conflicts in the world, created wars and prolonged the wars and ended wars when US wanted, but there is no such system any longer. There are new powers in the world, and the United States has limited resources. The foreign debt of United States is around $38 trillion, and every year United States pays roughly $1.5 trillion only for the interest of this foreign debt. And with the awareness of this, Trump and his team developed a new geopolitical design for the United States. They issued National Security Strategy on November 2025 and issued National Defense Strategy on January 2026. And what we learn from these two very important documents, that the United States wanted to prioritize the Western Hemisphere and China, meaning that they would withdraw their forces from Middle East and Europe. They also want to establish a strategic balance with Russia, and this is the reason why Trump wanted to end the war in Ukraine. His intention was to develop a new relationship with Russia and to create a balance in this part of the world. So these developments led to different discussions and debates. United States aimed to reduce its military presence in Europe and Middle East. So for the NATO side, when he came to power, he harshly criticized Europeans for investing very little to their military and security. And you know, after the Second World War, United States provided many resources for the security of Europe. It was a burden on the United States, and European countries enjoyed very cheap security in Europe. Trump asked NATO countries to raise their defense investments to 2% of their GDPs. This was agreed in his first term. When he came to power for the second time, he asked to raise this 2% to the 5%, which was also agreed. It's a 10-year perspective. Later on, you know, Trump started talking about Greenland. He said he wanted to annex Greenland to United States, and that created a big crisis in NATO because Greenland was an autonomous region of Denmark, which Denmark is also a NATO country.
Okay.
And that resulted in debates whether the United States is leaving NATO, is it the end of NATO? But in the Munich Security Conference, the State Secretary of US, Rubio, he mentioned that the United States does not want to leave NATO, but US wants to reduce its support to NATO countries in Europe. But
Mhm.
he also added that United States will continue to provide strategic assets that the Europeans do not have. What happened recently? United States was trapped by Israel and went to war in Iran. Israel trapped President Trump by saying that the war will last very short. They would be able to overthrow the Iranian regime within a week or within a couple of days. That didn't happen. And United States is now in a tightened position in the Middle East. And this has even damaged the geopolitical design of the United States because its priority was China and the Western Hemisphere, but now United States is tightened in the Middle East and cannot exit from the war because they were not able to reach their war objectives. And on the contrary, Iran has managed to control the entire Strait of Hormuz and created a global economic crisis. So they are not able to reverse this situation, either militarily or politically. Trump asked NATO allies to send their navies, or at least some ships, for a naval operation at the Strait of Hormuz. This was rejected. You know, in NATO, the Article 5 is the core of NATO, which means the collective defense. In case of an aggression to any of the member nations, all NATO
Mhm.
nations respond to this aggression jointly. But in this case, you know, United States is not the
Attack
victim.
Iran.
United States is the aggressor. They are carrying out an illegitimate, illegal war together with Israel against Iran. And the United States is asking NATO's support. So it is not possible to support United States in the context of Article 5. In the aftermath of the Cold War, NATO developed two new missions to make NATO survive. One of them was non-Article 5 operations, which is also called out-of-area operations. If NATO countries agree by consensus to carry out a crisis response operations to support Trump, this can be the case, but the European countries do not want to provide support to this because it is not in line with the security interests of the European countries and other NATO allies. So the countries also do not want to send individually ships to the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump stated that it is a betrayal. He said he was disappointed and he started blaming NATO and NATO countries. This is the situation. I mean, the NATO countries and NATO as an organization is not in a position that it should support NATO or it should support USA. And this is the latest situation.
We can see on media a few days ago, Joe Kent, the former director of the US Counterterrorism Center, stated that the US wanted to leave NATO so it could support Israel if there was a possible Israel-Turkey war. How seriously do you think this should be taken? Do you think US will withdraw from NATO? If yes, when and how might that happen? What do you think? What's your opinion?
So I heard about this, as you said, but I don't know what are the rationale behind Joe Kent's statements. I mean, it may be serious. So let's try to analyze this situation. Israel is very influential over the decisions of United States government based on the lobby in the United States. Israel dragged United States into war. And US has a very high extent of influence over NATO and NATO countries.
Mhm.
In that case, isn't Israel influencing the NATO?
Mhm.
So if this is the case, why would Israel want US to leave NATO? This is one discussion.
Yeah.
On the other side, if United States wants to fight a war against Turkey together with Israel, US can do it even without leaving NATO, because United States do not care about international law and US commitments. NATO would not be an obstacle for US to fight a war against Turkey with Israel
Mhm.
if they really want it. And the third one is, if US leaves NATO, NATO may dissolve or may continue as an European organization, but the dissolution of NATO is also a high possibility in case US leaves it. So if NATO dissolves, Turkey will not be able to benefit from the NATO's so-called security umbrella. So maybe Israel might be thinking of isolating Turkey. But my point is different here. Whatever Israel does, it won't be the case for their success in case of a war with Turkey and Israel.
Maybe here can we say that Israel can use some different groups against Turkey, not
Yes,
directly attacking, but maybe they can use some groups against Turkey.
it is already used, not only Israel, but many countries from Europe,
Yes.
even
Mhm.
even the United States used PKK against Turkey for many
Mhm.
years. Israel now is fighting inside Lebanon, and Israel is not able to defeat Hezbollah on the ground. In
Yes.
2006, Hezbollah forces defeated Israel forces inside Lebanon on the ground. Imagine a country which is not able to defeat a lightly armed group. How could they fight a war against Turkey? Turkey
Mhm.
has many diverse type of military capabilities, and Turkey is a nation which fights as a whole nation. Turkey doesn't fight only with its military, but it fights as a nation. My advice to those to read the history, especially the war history of Turkey.
Mhm.
So this is my assessment. I mean, it doesn't make a change whether United States leaves NATO or whether US remains in NATO. And if Israel has such plans, those plans will not work, in my opinion. Concerning the withdrawal of United States from NATO, in the Washington Treaty, Article 13, it is described how a NATO member can withdraw from NATO. A country, if thinks about withdrawal from NATO, this country should notify NATO 1 year before their withdrawal. So this is the technical part of it. For the United States, there is also another discussion whether Trump can make this decision on his own without any Congress approval. It
Mhm.
is also, I mean, the lawyers in the United States are divided on this issue. According to some lawyers, it is mandatory that they should go for Congress approval, but some claim that there is no need for president to go to such an approval. If US leaves NATO, NATO may become, as I said, a European organization. The name may change. There are different approaches for the security of Europe, but the Europeans believe that they need Turkey for the security of Europe. In light of these discussions, Turkey's role has become more important to Europeans and European security.
General, thank you for sharing your thoughts.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching us. Hope to see you on our next programs.